Former President Jacob Zuma will be joining his legal team at the Pietermaritzburg High Court today. This is also the lead prosecutor, Billy Downer, who will hear whether he will be accused or rather recused from the corruption trial against Zuma. The start of the trial, which was meant to begin earlier this year, was delayed as a result of Zuma filling a special plea, or should I say filing a special plea to have Downer recused from the case because he believes that he lacks impartiality and independence. Now, Zuma faces 16 charges of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering. This is all related to the controversial 1990s arms deal. Let's get the latest now from our team. Senior politics reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo is there alongside our editor, that's Dianne Hawker, and reporter Karinda Jagmohan. Let's start with you, Ziyanda. Have you caught sight of the former president? How is he looking? We understand he's already in court.
Absolutely, Toli. Well, around 30 minutes ago, former President Jacob Zuma arrived here at the Pietermaritzburg High Court in a quite understated manner, might I add. And you'll recall that this morning there still wasn't clarity as to whether or not he would be here. But throughout my crossings this morning, I indicated that there was a heavy contingent of members of the Presidential Protection Services. And, Toli, you would know that there are certain faces, that once you identify them, you almost have assurance that the former president or any, official who they protect will be making their way, not really looking too well, might I add, that former President Jacob Zuma walking quite slowly into the court. He's currently in the holding room behind me, where he is obviously going to be ushered into the court just before proceedings begin. But it is clear that he is, we know now for sure that he's here, and he will be in this court to hear the handing down of that judgment as to whether or not Billy Downer will be recused from this matter. Of course, we know that added to that if Billy Downer is recused, Zuma's legal team has requested that they be granted an immediate acquittal.
Ziyanda, you've been talking to a political, or should I say a legal analyst there. What are their views about the chances that Billy Downer stands in either being taken off this case, and if he does, who might likely take over?
Well, Oli, let's start at the beginning as to why it seems the Zuma's legal team has decided to actually have Billy Downer recused. You'll know that Billy Downer has a serious institutional memory when it comes to this matter because he successfully prosecuted Zuma's former financial advisor, Shabir Sheikh, in 2004. Another complication here is that Billy Downer is due for retirement soon. So it would seem that part of the strategy is to try and get rid of him or actually continue delaying the matter until he actually retires. Well, I spoke to Mpumelelo Zigalala about the issue of the former president now opening a case against Billy Downer at a Pietermaritzburg police station last week. He's of the view that they should have mounted that before actually filing the special plea. They could have gone also to the Legal Practitioners Council and also filed a complaint within the NPA's ethics office that if they'd done all these things before, by the time they actually filed their special plea, they would have been able to show that they're so aggrieved that they've actually, explored all these various avenues and are now also asking the courts to relieve them of Billy Downer because they feel so strongly about his conduct. While Zuma's legal team has not done that, they only raised the issue of his conduct, through the special plea for the first time. And the response by Wim Trengove, who was representing Billy Downer, was to say, well, these issues can be ventilated during the actual trial and that they don't need a trial within a trial as the special plea has been described. So certainly in terms of that case that has been opened, it's more about the optics than it is about having a substantial impact on the judgment that Judge Piet Koen will hand down today.
Ziyanda Ngcobo, thank you very much for the time being. Let's touch base with other colleagues now. That's editor Dianne Hawker alongside Karinda Jagmohan, standing on two different entrances of the courtroom. This is now outside court. Dianne, let's start with you. What are you seeing from your end?
Well, Xoli, what we've definitely seen since the arrival of the former president here, he arrived just around 8:30, and there's definitely been a bit of a uptick in the energy. You know, some of the lawyers here at court asking what's going on. You know, why are there more police? What's actually happening at court today? In this corridor where I'm standing now is the main entrance to the court, and a few minutes ago we saw quite a number of police officers arrive and station themselves just at the actual entrance. Earlier this morning, they were not situated in that position. There's about 4 or 5 of them at the entrance, and there were actually another group who went more towards the entrance of the court building itself, which is in front of me. And they seem to be just kind of going around the building, just ensuring that everything is in order. There's also a little bit of an operations center that has been set up over here, where some of the police are also stationed. So we can see that there's definitely, from a security perspective, if you also include the security officials who came with the former president, quite a lot of a hive of activity. However, we still haven't seen any supporters at the court today, and the police officers that we've spoken to off the record say that they're not expecting any supporters to arrive. However, they are taking precautions, and they want to be ready in the event that any supporters do arrive later on this morning.
Yeah, Dianne, I speak to you about this now, knowing full well that you did cover some of the July unrest. Incidentally, today there is a truck drivers strike, we understand, on the N3 towards KZN. It's probably completely unrelated, but do you think that that might be a cause for concern? Might be also the reason why we have so many police stationed outside court?
Well, I think the police are taking some precautions based on what they've actually seen happen here previously. You know, at the Pietermaritzburg court, we are used to seeing, large numbers of supporters coming, even when there isn't a specific rallying call for those supporters to actually come. Earlier on, my colleague Karinda Jagmohan actually made reference to one of the previous instances when it was under a higher level of lockdown and we saw crowds gathering here. But we haven't seen the usual kind of mobilization. In fact, almost a bit of a downplaying from the perspective of those who ordinarily organize groups on behalf of the former president. Yesterday, we saw that tweet from the Jacob Zuma Foundation actually saying that he was not intending to arrive, and the confirmation of his arrival came not even 5 minutes before he actually appeared here at court. And there was a bit of a scurry and a flurry of journalists trying to actually get there. From the general public in Pietermaritzburg here, to be honest, they seem to be getting on with their day. Not many of them seem to be aware that there's actually this case taking place. As I mentioned earlier, some of the lawyers actually asked me, what's actually happening, because they're seeing this police contingent. So it does seem like it's a bit of a life as usual here. But of course, almost a historic moment taking place here in court with that decision that will determine whether this case actually continues or it stalls at this case.
Dianne Hawker, thank you very much for that update. Let's quickly now talk to Karinda Jagmohan to get from her. Karinda, Dianne says there isn't really much of a support that has turned outside court for the former president. What do you think that is as a result of? Might it be that the former president may not necessarily been assumed to be present in court? Well, he has turned up, but there's not many people outside.
Yes, I believe, in fact, that was the case, wherein it was unclear whether the former President Jacob Zuma would be in court in person, but we have seen about half an hour, about 40 minutes ago, actually, Jacob Zuma, almost sneaking into the High Court at another entrance, and of course he'll be seated there for that judgment. But we do not expect supporters. However, despite this, there is still remains a high presence of police now outside court. My colleague Dianne Hawker was just saying there was an upkick in the police presence around the court, and that is right. The barbed wire placed here now blocking one of the entrances to the court, the main driveway for judges and court officials to come through. Several police vehicles, you can see behind me, they're also just parked towards some of the pedestrian entrances to the court as well, and a major part of the road outside the High Court has been cordoned off. This has been the case for many of these appearances involving the former president because of his stature, because of the crowds that he attracts when he appears at court, and so this is really a move anticipating that there would be crowds. Although I must also tell you, it's quite a cold day in Pietermaritzburg. It was raining earlier this morning, so we do not expect many people to come out in these sort of conditions. But just to add to what you were speaking about with my colleague Dianne Hawker, indeed protests that we are seeing on the N3 near Harrismith, the groups that are protesting there, the ATDF, the Forum, they have been part of the RET groups that usually lend their support to Zuma, and while the two are not necessarily related, these are members of the groups that are usually mobilized in instances like this, or instances we saw during protests whereby members belonging to these RET factions come out to protest or lend their support to various politicians. But in the meantime, on the ground here outside the Pietermaritzburg High Court, it is relatively quiet. A few people sort of coming through asking what has been happening, and I do presume that a bit later in the day, closer to when court gets underway, we might see some groups of people with their regalia, whether it be MKMVA regalia or ANC regalia, coming through to lend their support to the former president as he awaits this judgment, something he has been pushing for, saying that Billy Downer is biased against him and should not be that prosecutor to hold Zuma accountable.
Karinda Jagmohan, thank you very much. That's our team outside and inside the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We'll be back there as soon as the court proceedings begin.